one of the greatest years in movie history because of all the classics that came out, not least of which was The Wizard of Oz. Although, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't as big of a hit when it came out in 1939. It grew in everyone's esteem over the years when it hit television in the 50s. Do you remember seeing this on TV every Thanksgiving?
Oh yeah.
I think by the time Ben was born, they stopped doing it. But I remember in the late 70s and early 80s, you could bank on The Wizard of Oz playing on CBS, if I remember correctly, every Thanksgiving. Like it was either the Sunday or the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And we looked forward to it every year because in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have VHS, we didn't have cable. The only time you could see this is when it aired on television, unless you were lucky enough to live in some nice place where they had repertory theater screenings. So this was a big event movie for me, like yearly. And I saw it many, many times growing up. Everyone loved this movie. I don't know anyone who doesn't like The Wizard of Oz. But I will attempt to synopsize it. You guys want me to try?
Go for it.
Sure, go for it.
I can speak to some of the political context of the original novel too, if you're interested in that. But we'll start with the film synopsis.
I bet you can, Ben. The political stuff is where your heart's at. Weird guy, Ben. Anyway, this is based on a book by Frank Baum about a spoiled little farm girl played by Judy Garland. Her name's Dorothy. She's whisked away in a tornado, which is still one of the most believable practical effects in old movies that you'll ever see. It's as good as anything in Twister. Granted, you only see it from a distance, but damn, it looks good.
Yeah.
She's whisked away in a tornado to the magical land of Oz, where a good witch, played by Billy Burke, sends her down the yellow brick road to the Emerald City to find the wizard, a man so powerful he can grant any wish, including Dorothy's wish to return home to Kansas with her little dog, Toto. Along the way, she's joined by a scarecrow, played by Ray Bolger, and a Tin Woodsman, played by Jack Haley, and a cowardly lion, played by Bert Lahr. They all join Dorothy for their own needs. They want to ask the wizard for a brain, a heart, and as the lion calls it, the noive, because he needs courage. The quest isn't without peril or setbacks, however, because there is a Wicked Witch of the West, played by Margaret Hamilton, on their trail. She and her flying monkeys will stop at nothing to get Dorothy's ruby slippers, which she got off the feet of the Wicked Witch's sister in Munchkinland when the tornado dropped Dorothy's house right on top of the sister. So, and then unfortunately, once they get to the wizard, they find out he's really not such a wonderful wizard after all. He's kind of a sham. He's kind of a scam. But this is a quintessential fantasy adventure movie. It's given birth to a lot of other formulaic fantasy type adventure movies. And the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow, there's a handful of songs in this movie. And they're all kind of fun, but Somewhere Over the Rainbow is in a league of its own. It's way up there with You Must Remember This. Like those two songs are, I think, there's no other songs. There's those two at the top, and then there's every other song in a movie. They're that beautiful and that impactful. The cast is really good all the way around. And it's a ambitious film. It cost more money than MGM had ever spent on a film at the time. It was $2.78 million. And unfortunately, it wasn't enough to make a profit in its theatrical initial release. But goodness knows, over the ensuing decades, it's made more than that, because this is one of the most merchandisable and re-released movies in movie history. So I'm going to say my favorite parts, and there's quite a few of them, but the dark stuff is the stuff that we relate with, right? Like you were just saying you liked Wicked 2, Dave, because it was darker. And I love Return to Oz, which is pretty dark. And I think when we talk about The Wiz, the dark parts are going to be some of our favorites too. There's something about these Oz movies.
Flying monkeys, man.
Even though they're kind of, all of them are for kids, and they're fun, and they're fantasy, they're also kind of horror movies at the same time. And I think that kind of, I don't know, examining the extent to which children and family films are also horror films would be a very interesting exploration, because I think it happens more often than we acknowledge. But I love the flying monkeys. You don't see enough of them. I think because their makeup's a little goofy. Like, that's one picture right there. It's very hard to find good pictures of the monkeys. They tried to execute the monkeys through animation, and they thought it looked a little hokey, so they ended up just going with the best makeup they could put together. But the forest, when the monkeys come to attack and they start tearing up the scarecrow, and they pick up Dorothy and carry her away, that's some pretty scary shit. I love the Cowardly Lion. In terms of the cast, he's a highlight for me because I think he's really funny and sweet. And Frank Morgan plays multiple parts. He's the wizard. He's like the sham guy that Dorothy meets at the beginning of the movie, who kind of tricks her into running back home because she's run away from home at the beginning of the movie. And he kind of gets her to go back by lying and saying he sees her Auntie M crying in her crystal ball, playing on her sympathies. They're probably my two favorite actors in it, although they're all good. And that tornado effect is really awesome. And I love the Winkies. For some reason, my favorite scene is probably when the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion have to get into the witch's castle. And they get into a kerfuffle with three of the Winkies, which are the Wicked Witch's guard. And they end up in the Winkies' costumes, insinuating that they won the fight. And then they follow all the other marching Winkies. Oh. I love that little part. And then you see the Cowardly Lion's tail sticking out of his costume, and Toto. I don't know why, but that little part, that little scene of those three guys sneaking into that castle, those costumes and the just like emblazoned in my brain at a young age. And it's just like, whenever I'm rewatching the movie, I'm like, hell yeah, that's the coolest part. I don't know why. know why. And I sing the Scarecrow song. I could while away the hours. Like, it just gets into your brain. This movie gets into your brain. But I've talked about it a little bit too much. What are some of the things that you guys like about it?
Have you ever heard how they did the tornado in The Wizard of Oz?
Something to the effect of they had a bunch of Fuller's Earth on the ground, and they dragged like a hose from the scaffolding above the stage along. That's the extent of my memory. What else do you know about it?
What I read was that they used a women's stocking and they stretched it to a point, and then they blew air up through it with an air compressor.
Whatever works, man. You never know what's going to work. And today with CGI, they'll just go straight to CGI instead of thinking, "Oh, pantyhose."
Right.
That'll be part of the answer. But no, the tornado looks spectacular today. No green screen, no compositing. Like it's actually there in the background, in camera, and that's just awesome.
I was watching it with my wife, who again is from India, so it's really interesting to share this national treasure with somebody who's just never seen it.
Really?
Clue about it, yeah. And yeah, it's funny because there's so many parallels to my wife's story. Where, I mean, she's coming from India to America, but she actually came to Kansas first. And when I met her, she lived with a little old lady with a dog just like Toto.
A terrier.
And so I would say it's you and Schnitzel, because that's the dog's name that she had.
Schnitzel.
So she got a kick out of that. But yeah, the sepia tone, like real world scenes, she was watching it, and then when the twister hit, she's like, "Oh my god, it's actually really intense! Like, what's going on?" Like for that time, and because she'd seen the Twister movies with me. And at the time, she didn't realize that Kansas is one of the worst places for tornadoes, and she had zero clue while she was living there. But as far as how I saw it as a kid, this film has the distinct accolade of being the only fantasy film that my dad just wholeheartedly loves. Usually he abhors fantasy or horror films or anything like that, but man, he just... It's so well written, and just like the subtle humor here and there, and like I love he loves the part where you better get out of here before someone drops a house on you too.
Yes.
Like, oh.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's what I love about the screenplay is something I compared to Back to the Future. They're both very economical in how they dole out little pieces of exposition. And in both movies, Back to the Future, you go back in time, and in Oz, you go to another land. But in both movies, there's one world, and then there's the world within the world. and they echo certain characters and elements between the two worlds. Both of these movies do that really well. There's not a lot of fat in either of them.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, get you to appreciate Back to the Future more, Ben.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I don't recall it being kind of the Thanksgiving special, but we did watch it a lot at school, just on like days or like holidays where it's like, oh, we're going to watch a movie at school now. So, okay. There was that, and Turner Classic Movies plays it pretty frequently, I think, on cable. So...
When I was in school, all we got to watch was the frickin' Apple Dumpling Gang. Every year, that was the only film print my school had, had dibs on or something. So we had to watch the Apple Dumpling Gang like 5 times as kids. And it's like, oh man, not the Apple Dumpling Gang again. I get excited. There's not a lot of action in this movie, but what little action there is, I thought they do so well. The whole sequence, beginning with the witch yelling at them, and the scarecrow seeing that, swinging, grabbing the Tin Man's arm and chopping that rope, and then the chandelier falling on all the guards, and then them all running, and then them getting cornered in that turret type room on top of the tower wall. The whole little chase sequence, it's probably only 30 to 45 seconds long, but I just love that part.
Yeah.
And I started playing Night on Bald Mountain. When I was watching it this last time, I noticed that they played a piece of classical music. Dun, 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 dun. And for some reason, I never realized that's not original score. That's some classical shit they're playing. But I think they wove it into the score. And that kind of also gives it timelessness to go back to music that old. Dorothy's a little weird, though. If I'm going to try and pick at this movie, which is kind of stupid to do so because it works so well and it's such a loved movie that it's almost dumb to try and criticize it, but... There was controversy over casting Judy Garland when she was cast in the role of Dorothy because she's a little too old. Dorothy's supposed to be younger.
They wanted to cast Shirley Temple,
who was like the biggest star in Hollywood in the few years leading up to this.
And she was only, I think, like 10 years old at the time.
Which is closer to how old the character's supposed to be, I think.
Yeah.
She was under contract with another studio, though. I can't remember which one.
Fox, I bet.
Yeah, but they were going to trade Clark Gable, who was kind of their exclusive person, to get her, and then the deal fell through.
But and I feel bad for Judy Garland because I think this is the movie when the studio obsessed over her weight. Judy Garland was less than 5 foot tall, so if she gained any weight at all, on screen you were going to notice it more. So someone in the studio was even on record having called her a little piggy with pigtails. So they made her take pills to keep her diet, her food cravings down, to help her sleep, and to give her energy. And she and her the guy they paired her with all the time, Mickey Rooney.
Yeah.
Am I thinking the right Rooney? That's Mickey Rooney.
No,
it's not Mickey the one Rooney from 60 Minutes. The one from that's Andy Rooney.
That's Andy Rooney.
Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland made a lot of movies together, and decades after Wizard of Oz came out, they both would talk about how awful it was being a star at MGM at that time because they kept them working 72 hours straight sometimes. And they would have to give them so many pills to keep them energetic while they shot that long, and then to put them to sleep, they would give them sleeping pills to make them go to sleep. And they also monitored what they ate and everything. And they basically gave these people lifelong addictions. Judy Garland developed addictions to acetaminophen and barbiturates. And I think it started on this movie. So in every beautiful little thing, there's some darkness in the making, I suppose. And then if I had to cut anything from this movie, might be a controversial pick, but I think I would cut the little musical number if I were King of the Forest. It's the only part that doesn't really further the plot at all. Yeah, everything else is there for a reason.
Shoehorned in there,
It doesn't hurt the movie much, though. But it's like everything else is so purposeful and so here for a reason, and then there's just that little musical number. And I guess you could call it a grace note, but I don't know. I might remove that. But man, otherwise, I can't find much to fault this movie for. It's a classic for a reason. And I have a lot of trivia about it that we could talk about if you guys want.
Let's do it.
Do you guys know what Judy Garland's real birth name was?
Oh, I used to, but I don't remember.
It's easy to forget because I've known lots of times. Frances Gumm.
Frances Gumm, yeah.
So she changed it to Judy Garland when she became an actor, I suppose. Louis B. Mayer insisted she consume only chicken soup, black coffee, and cigarettes, along with pills to reduce her appetite. The poppy fields, you know, when it snows, the snow was made of asbestos.
Oh, great.
They didn't know, I guess, back then. In working conditions, the guilds and the unions didn't have as much power. Buddy Ebsen from the Beverly Hillbillies was originally cast as the Tin Woodsman, but he had an allergic reaction to the aluminum powder makeup. So he was in the hospital while they recast that part with Jack Haley. And though Victor Fleming is credited as the director of The Wizard of Oz, there are actually several people who directed parts of this movie, because back in the studio days in the 30s, it was a factory, man, and whoever got credit is not necessarily who did all the work. They pulled Victor Fleming off The Wizard of Oz to go and direct Gone with the Wind at some point. And among the other directors who worked on this movie were King Vidor, Norman Taurog, Richard Thorpe, and George Cukor. Liza Minnelli, who is the daughter of Judy Garland, ended up marrying the Tin Woodsman's son, Jack Haley Jr. From 1974 to 79 they were married. So I thought that was a nice little connection. The Munchkins were played by 124 little people who ranged in height from 2'3" to 4'8". They were each paid $100 a week. The filming lasted 26 weeks, so they ended up spending $322,400 on the Munchkins. And Judy Garland would joke on television shows when people would ask her. She said the Munchkins were horny and they drank a lot and fornicated a lot. Maybe it was true.
Have either of you guys seen Under the Rainbow?
I don't know.
No.
What is that?
It's about the Munchkins. You should check it out sometime. It's pretty funny.
Is it like a documentary or is it a fictional?
Man, I don't remember. I think it was a little of both, actually. But
but it's directly it's something about the Munchkins from Wizard of Oz.
Yes, it's about the.
I also have some tidbits about the ruby slippers. They think 4 or maybe 5 pairs were made. They were made of satin covered in 2,300 sequins. 1 pair is on display at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C.
Seen those.
Another pair sold for $666,000 at auction in the year 2000. And another pair was stolen from the Judy Garland Museum in Grand Rapids, Minnesota in 2005.
Yeah.
A $1 million reward was offered. The FBI recovered them in 2018, and the thief was sentenced in January 2024.
Yeah.
Those slippers were then auctioned off for a record-breaking $32.5 million in November of last year.
It's really a cool story, and if you get a chance, there is a podcast, like a multi-episode podcast about that story. It's called what is it called? No Place Like Home, I think. So you should check it out.
That might be cool. There is one final pair of ruby slippers currently on display at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles. To acquire it, a lot of actors, famous people in Hollywood, pooled their money, including Steven Spielberg and Leonardo DiCaprio. That's my Oz trivia. There's tons of Oz trivia, but I kind of cherry-picked that stuff. I can't find any fault with this movie, and I've grown up with it, so I have to give it a 10. I will say I'm maybe growing. I didn't enjoy it watching it this weekend as much as I've enjoyed it in the past. And I think maybe it's just because I don't enjoy family movies as much as I did, but who knows. I still really enjoyed it, and God knows this movie was important to me growing up, and I've loved it for so long. And it created a formula that's been used over and over again. The book I learned to write screenplays from, it was a book by Christopher Vogler called The Writer's Journey, which kind of distills Joseph Campbell's teachings into like a a form that idiots can learn from, because he's hard to understand if you just read straight Joseph Campbell. And all through that book, the hero's journey, they use the Wizard of Oz as the example to pull all things from. So like every archetypal element in the hero's journey you can find in the Wizard of Oz. It's like a crystalline version of that formula. So I adore it. You guys have love. Oh, you gave it a 10.
That's fair. I would give it a 10.
I gave it a 10 too. I always get the wrong one.
Same here. 10 out of 10.
10s across the board.
Well, it's nice to know we can still agree on some movies, Ben.